Hello everyone, I'm Nick from nextstepnick.com and today we're going to talk a bit about Fallout 76 after the Wastelanders update. So a while ago I did a bit of a video visiting Fallout 76 after a little bit of time had passed to see what I thought of it. You're welcome to check that out. That's actually going to be popping up via a card in the top right part of your screen right about now. So give that a click if you haven't seen that already, just to get an idea of what Fallout was like prior to the Wastelanders update. Now, full disclosure, I did actually play it a bit after that. I played with a friend. I think it's that element of anything is fun if you play it with a friend. So I really enjoyed it, to an extent. I think the game itself needs tons and tons of work, or needed tons and tons of work, but there were elements you could enjoy with someone else, I suppose, if you played together, but it wasn't great. But the Wastelanders update's added loads of different things, it's added factions, it's added conversation, it's added a lot more purpose to the game, and to be honest, it's definitely a positive, so we're going to go through that a little bit in this video. In regard to new additions, there's quite a lot of stuff. The new things that they've added capitalises on stuff like the levelling up system with new cards there. There's quite a few new weapons as well which are quite fun, like the bow and the crossbow, which are really enjoyable, and there are cards that correspond to them as well that you can now unlock. I think the levelling was always something that was a bit fun in 76, just because it harkens back to be honest, what people liked about the original Fallouts and what they liked about the Elder Scrolls series. And so when the game leans into that the most, it's when 76 is at its most fun. When it really starts to try and do the things that people enjoyed from the older games, it's when they bring in new aspects that the game struggles. So for example, the base building is fun to an extent, but it hasn't really grown much since 4. We talked about that before, and the actual world itself doesn't look great. There's a bit of a frame rate issue from time to time. That being said, the new dialogue and new characters are really fun. Really enjoyable additions, and I think they really add something nice to the game itself. There's a lot more you can do and ways you can interact with the world, and I thought that was a great addition. I think that the way they're utilised to tell story, but also in the ways that the character can interact with them, is exactly what people wanted to see in the initial game. But I think that's part of the reason why Wastelanders is, in a way, a little bit disappointing, because you can see this lovely aspect, this wonderful idea that if it had been fully realised when the game released, would have done pretty well, better than it did at least. And the voice acting's great.
Picked the wrong time to get a drink.
What are you? Hey! Who the hell are... Whoa, you looking for trouble? Because you're gonna find it.
It does a great job of really drawing you into the story, and especially when it comes to the ways in which your perception and your charisma and different other aspects help you to interact with characters, really makes it feel worthwhile levelling certain skills up. I'm going to be honest, from my time playing the game before this, unless you played with other players all the time, there was no point in levelling up charisma. Now it looks like there's that reason to do so. And also in regard to the characters themselves, it's quite fun to get those interactions. It's a shame because the game itself is still such a mixed bag. On the one hand you get this really positive stuff, but on the other hand it's still full of bugs. Be prepared to see enemies clipping through walls, enemies clipping through ceilings, teleporting to the wrong locations. Myself, when I started this up, the first thing that happened was I ended up clipping into my own housing. Then it was telling me that I was over encumbered when I wasn't. I was unable to do anything, I couldn't interact with the world around me, and I just got stuck in the floor. So that was a fun interaction that reminded me of what I was playing very, very fast and kind of ruined the immersion pretty quick. So bear in mind that that kind of stuff is still happening. Likewise with Wastelanders, it can be a bit awkward.
Just give me 1 second. Okay, I think that'll...
Clean up this, fix that. Never seems to end.
I definitely sympathise with that, and I think that's the problem really with Fallout 76, is that it still feels like it's on the way to being a game, but it's still incomplete, and it's a shame with such good voice acting now in the game.
Alright, quick version. Okay. I used to be part of this gang. I left, they nabbed me, and now they want to make a lesson out of me. How's that?
there's a lot of effort in certain places and the world feels way more alive than it used to. I think the major complaint that a lot of people, myself included, had about the game was that it felt so empty and just slapdash and thrown together, whereas you can see that there's a lot more artistic direction in regard to the way the world is structured now. When you look at the Wasteland locations where people are, it feels like they're actually living, breathing locations, as much as they can do in any Bethesda game, and that's a really great thing. But it just hits home the fact that this stuff should have been there in the beginning. It's good, it's better than it was, it's enjoyable, and there's a lot more reason to play now, especially if you're playing as a solo player. Jumping in with friends is always fun, but now you can actually have NPCs interact with you, follow you around at certain points, as far as I know, and you can also have them look after your bases and camps. I mean, I even picked up a creepy granddad for my house.
By the way, you can call me Grams if you like. Everybody who knows me does.
So that's another great reason to do so. The base building itself is still quite fun, and as far as I know as well, I mean, I have to say as far as I know for a few of these issues, because you tend to find with 76 that issues seem to be resolved and then they crop up again. I know that happened before where a patch was brought out that fixed a load of problems and then those problems were back. But in regard to the base building now, a lot of the problems have been solved, so quite a lot of the things you build don't take up quite as much space. The glitching and bugging out isn't as big a problem as it used to be, which is always good. I think there's always going to be issues with 76 in that there are certain aspects that are okay. There are ways it's kind of moving towards progressive steps. But even here in the house, there's just bits that I'd like to see more of. When you're in combat, you're playing with friends and you're exploring, it feels a lot more alive since the Wastelanders update. And this has always been one of the aspects of 76 that's always been fun, that chaotic fighting and exploring through areas you've never seen before. And when these things happen, they're great, you know? You're running through a camp and exploring with a friend, killing off enemies, looking for items, and then all of a sudden you're attacked by something else, and there's these really exciting sporadic moments that you can't really script that are just really fun. Really good things about the game that I definitely would say it's worth playing for. And likewise, if you're playing with friends, you're always going to have a relatively good time, but whereas before there was far less incentive to play, now the characters feel like they're all part of a cohesive world where things are going on. So there's a lot more reason to jump in, there's a lot more reason to interact with stuff, and there's a lot more reason to actually just get to grips with 76. I think now that it's on a cheaper price point, now you can pick it up at quite a cheap price and get that update, I'd probably recommend giving it a go. It might not be for everyone, I don't think it's the best game in the world, but if you want to explore something fresh and you'd like to build a building of your own and just get out there and have a bit of an explore like in the old days, this kind of scratches that itch, but not quite. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in everyone. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you again very soon.